December 8, 1941, Pearl Harbor, 2:17 a.m. A workboat rocks gently in black water that still smells like fuel and burnt paint. The harbor is quieter than it has any right to be. Quiet the way a room goes quiet after someone screams. Above the surface, silhouettes of wrecked battleships sit low and wounded, their steel ribs lit by scattered floodlights. Below the surface, the darkness feels thicker, like it has weight. Navy diver First Class Robert "Bob" Ransford sits on the edge of the deck with his boots braced wide, gloved hands resting on his knees. He's already sweating inside his heavy canvas suit, even in the night air. The Mark V diving helmet, brass and round-shouldered, waits beside him like an executioner's mask. "Line tends to foul down there," mutters Chief Bosun's Mate Henry "Hank" Lavoie, checking the umbilical hose with a practiced anger. Airline, communications, lifeline. In this harbor, every one of those feels like the only thing separating a man from being swallowed. Ransford doesn't answer right away. He watches the water. Because the water isn't just water anymore. It's a graveyard. It's a trap. It's a place where oil slicks cling to skin and a man can drown in something that isn't even the ocean. A petty officer brings the clipboard closer, tries to speak like it's just another job. "Targets off the southeast side of Ford Island," he says. "We had reports during the attack, periscope wake, possible midget sub. Now we're getting other reports." "Other reports," Lavoie repeats, not hiding the contempt. The whole base is running on rumors and exhaustion. Men haven't slept. They've been digging sailors out of burning compartments with bare hands. They've been hearing tapping inside half-sunk hulls and not knowing whether it's a survivor or just metal cooling. The petty officer swallows. "Harbor Patrol says they snagged something on a net cable, something heavy, and there's movement." Movement. That single word lands like a stone in the chest. Because if there's movement down there, it could be a trapped American trying to breathe in a pocket of air. Or it could be something else entirely, something the Navy does not want alive inside its harbor. Ransford reaches for his helmet. The brass is cold. The glass ports stare back at him with the blank patience of machinery. "You ready, Bob?" Lavoie asks, voice lower now. Ransford nods once. You can almost feel the air thicken as the crew moves in. Hands lift the helmet, settle it onto the collar ring. Bolts turn. Metal tightens. The world narrows to the hiss of air and the faint crackle of the comm set. "Diver to topside," Ransford says into the mouthpiece. His own voice sounds like it belongs to someone older. "Topside to diver," comes the reply. "We read you, Bob." The supervisor, Lieutenant, junior grade, Charles Whitaker, Salvage Division, leans in close. His face is drawn and gray under the decklight. He smells like coffee that's been reheated too many times. "Listen," Whitaker says, not demonstrating calm, but demanding it. "You find survivors, you signal. You find anything that looks like enemy gear, you signal. You do not play hero." Ransford hears the unspoken line in that last sentence. You do not let whatever is down there slip away. "Aye, sir," he answers. A rope ladder dips into the water. The suit takes his weight, pulling him down until the harbor closes around his shoulders. The first touch is always a shock, water squeezing into the seams, cold pressing against the suit, oil slicking the exterior like grease on a skillet. Then the helmet glass goes black as the surface light disappears. Only a dim lamp on his chest gives him a yellow cone of visibility. And even that feels like a lie, because the water here isn't clear. It's thick with ash, debris, and the floating remains of yesterday morning. Ransford descends slowly, one rung at a time, boots finding the ladder by feel. The umbilical line tugs behind him like a living thing. His lamp catches fragments, a dangling cable, a torn life jacket drifting like a ghost, a sheet of metal with rivets ripped out, edges curled like petals. "Visibility's bad," he says. "Real bad." "Copy," Topside answers. "Take it slow." He reaches the bottom, mud and silt, stirred up by weeks of panic and the churn of propellers. His boots sink. The harbor floor feels soft, almost welcoming, and that makes it worse. He moves forward, careful not to snag the line. Every step stirs a cloud that swallows his light. He has to work by inches, sweeping his lamp, feeling with his free hand. Then his glove touches something not muddled. Steel, curved, smooth in one place, jagged in another. He steadies himself and leans in. The lamp reveals a shape lying half buried. Not a ship's plating, no debris. A cylinder, a hull. Small, too small to be American. Ransford's pulse hammers so hard he feels it in his throat. He turns his light down the length. There's a seam, a hatch ring, bolts, a periscope well, a midget submarine. "Topside," he says, forcing his voice to stay level. "I've got it. Enemy sub. Looks like one of the small ones." There's a pause on the line, just long enough for him to imagine men above looking at each other, thinking about the attack, about the dead, about the idea that one of the attackers might still be alive, right now, in the dark. "Copy," Whitaker's voice comes through. "Confirm condition. Any signs of life?" Ransford shifts closer. The hull is caked in silt and marine growth, but the metal still looks fresh in places, scraped raw. It's wedged against something that feels like a cable, a net, maybe. Harbor defense. He sweeps his lamp around the bow. There's damage, a torn section where steel has been crumpled inward. If it rammed the net, or got caught and forced itself through, it might have sealed its own fate. Ransford places his palm on the hull and feels it. A vibration. Not from current, not from his own airline. A faint, rhythmic tremor through the metal, like a distant engine turning over, or a man pounding with the last strength in his arms. He freezes. You can almost feel the moment with him, your breath catching, your brain trying to decide whether that sensation means rescue or ambush. "Topside," he says, quieter now. "I'm getting something. Could be movement inside, hard to tell." "Repeat," Whitaker says sharply. "Something inside. Possible crew alive." Silence again. Then Whitaker's voice, controlled but edged. "Do not attempt entry. Mark the position. We'll send ordnance if needed. We'll decide topside." Ordnance. If needed. The words hang in Ransford's helmet like smoke. He knows what they mean. Blow it open. Or blow it apart. Either way, whatever is inside stops being a problem. Ransford shifts his lamp toward the stern. The propeller is partially buried. The rudder is bent. The boat looks trapped, snarled by the harbor defenses like an animal in wire. He reaches for a piece of tangled cable, thinking to clear enough to attach a lift line to help the salvage crew haul it up. That's when his glove catches on something sharp near the midsection, something that tugs at his hand with a sudden, ugly pull. A line. Not his umbilical. A thin cord, taut, disappearing into a gap near the hull. Ransford's breathing accelerates. He angles his lamp. The cord looks too deliberate to be debris, too clean, too straight. A trip line? The kind you rig to a charge? He imagines a Japanese sailor inside, trapped, knowing he's going to die, deciding to take someone with him. A hand on a detonator, listening for the scrape of metal, the tug of a cable. Ransford pulls his hand back slowly, carefully, like he's withdrawing it from the mouth of a snake. "Topside," he says. "There's a cord or line running along the hull. Could be rigged. Possible booby trap." "Copy," Whitaker snaps. "Back off. Do not touch it. Repeat, do not touch." But the cord is already looped around a jagged edge of debris, and as the current shifts, it tightens. Ransford watches it move. A little. Not much. Enough. In his headset, he can hear topside voices overlapping, orders, arguments, the crackle of adrenaline. Somewhere above, men are deciding what his next minute looks like. Ransford's lamp trembles in his hand. He looks at the line again, follows it with the light toward the gap. And in that gap, barely visible, he sees a glint of metal. Not a bolt, not a hinge. A blade. A knife, wedged in place like a tool used in desperation. For a second, his brain refuses to cooperate. Why would there be a knife there? Why would it be positioned like that? Then it hits him with sick clarity. Someone inside might have pushed the blade into the seam to pry, to cut, to jam something. Maybe to create a vent. Maybe to rig a trigger. Maybe to sabotage their own boat rather than let it be captured. The harbor goes colder. The darkness feels closer. If that knife moves, if that cord tightens, does the sub flood? Does it explode? Does it fire something? Does it become a coffin for the men inside and a killing zone for the diver outside? Ransford's gloved hand hovers inches from the hull. He can almost feel the temptation to fix it, to stop it, to control the situation. But he also knows, in water like this, one wrong touch becomes your last decision. His voice comes out rough. "Topside. There's a knife wedged in the hull seam. I don't know what it's doing, but it looks intentional." Whitaker's reply is immediate. "Bob, back away. Now." Ransford takes one step backward. The silt shifts under his boot. His heel catches the cord. It tightens with a sudden, violent snap, like a wire pulled taut. In the same instant, the knife jerks, and the hull shudders. A muffled thump rolls through the water. Not loud like an explosion, but deep, heavy, final. The kind of sound you feel in your bones. Ransford's lamp beam jumps across the metal as his whole body reacts. Then, bubbles. Not from his own exhaust, from the submarine. A stream of air, thick and frantic, erupts from the seam where the knife just moved. The bubbles boil upward, carrying the last breath of the men inside into the black water of Pearl Harbor. Ransford stares, frozen, as the stream continues, then begins to slow. Inside that tiny hull, something has changed. Pressure equalizing, compartments flooding, life ending. And above him, in the quiet night, the Navy will decide what story to tell about what just happened down here. Because a diver's boot snagging a cord doesn't sound like strategy. It sounds like an accident. It sounds like panic. It sounds, if you choose your words carefully, like suicide. The bubbles are thin. Ransford forces air into his lungs, and his voice cracks through the comms. "Topside," he says. "She's venting. She's flooding. I think they just lost it." There's a pause. Then Whitaker, colder than before. "Bob, get out of there. Now." Ransford turns, pushing through the silt cloud, climbing back toward the faint shimmer of surface light. But as he rises, His lamp swings once more across the midget sub's hull, and through the bubbles, he sees something else. A small hatch seam twitch, just slightly, as if a hand inside is still trying, even now, to open it. And the question follows him upward like a shadow. Were they trying to kill themselves? Or were they trying to surrender? Ransford breaks the surface hard, like the ocean spits him back out. Oil slicks off his suit in rainbow swirls under the workboat's lights. Hands grab his shoulder straps and steady him while he finds the ladder with his boots. "Easy, easy," Lavoie barks, but his voice trembles anyway. The helmet comes off with a twist of bolts and a gasp of released heat. Ransford's face is pale, eyes red-rimmed from strain and stale air. He coughs once, then sits there, staring at nothing, as if the water is still wrapped around his chest. Whitaker leans over him. "Talk to me." Ransford swallows, throat dry. There was a cord, tight along the hull. Looked rigged, like a trip line. "Rigged how?" Whitaker presses. "I don't know," Ransford says, anger beginning to push through the shock. "I didn't pull it on purpose. My heel caught it when I stepped back. It tightened. Then—" He lifts his hands, shaping the memory. "There was a knife wedged into the seam. It moved when the line snapped. After that, the boat shuddered. Then air started venting from the seam, like she'd opened to the sea." A few of the men exchange looks. Not the look of sailors sharing a story, more like men calculating what this becomes in writing. Whitaker's jaw works. "You're saying the knife was part of a mechanism?" "I'm saying it was placed," Ransford replies. "It wasn't driftwood. It wasn't debris. It was a knife jammed into steel like someone meant it." Lavoie steps in, voice low and hard. "Japanese carry those little utility knives. Some of them got short swords. They'll rig anything if it means taking you with them." Whitaker turns toward the petty officer with the clipboard. "Log it." The petty officer hesitates. "How, sir?" Whitaker's eyes narrow just enough. "As possible self-destruct. Enemy action." Ransford hears it and feels his stomach twist. Because what Whitaker just did, quietly, efficiently, was decide the shape of what happened. A diver snagged a line. A knife shifted. Men drowned. But on paper, it can become something cleaner. Enemy action. Enemy suicide. Controlled outcome. Anything but, we don't fully understand what we touched in our own harbor. Whitaker looks back at Ransford. "You're sure about the bubbles?" "Sir, it was like opening a valve," Ransford says. "A lot of air, then less, then less." "Any sign of the hatch moving?" Ransford pauses. It would be easy to leave that part out. Easier for everyone. But the image won't let go of him, metal seam twitching like a dying eyelid. "I thought I saw the hatch seam shift," he admits. "Barely. Could have been pressure. Could have been someone." Silence falls. Even the engine noise seems distant. Whitaker's voice drops to the tone officers use when they want certainty in a world that won't give it. If there were survivors, they're gone now. Ransford opens his mouth, then closes it again. You can almost feel the moral weight settle, heavy, wet, unavoidable. Divers are trained to cut through metal and debris. They are not trained for the moment when a rescue becomes a drowning. Whitaker straightens. "We're going back. We're marking the wreck, attaching lines. We lift it at first light. If there are bodies, we recover them. If there's intelligence, we secure it. Understood?" "Aye, sir," Lavoie answers. Ransford doesn't speak. His hands are still trembling, and he hides them by gripping the deck edge. The workboat turns, puttering across the dark harbor. The lights of Ford Island shimmer on the oily surface. Somewhere in the distance, a hammer rings against steel. Salvage crews already working a ship that still has dead men inside. When the boat reaches the marker buoy they dropped earlier, the crew moves with fast, practiced urgency. Grapnels, ropes, winch lines, orders clipped short. No one wants to be out here longer than they have to. Ransford gets the helmet back on. Lavoie tightens the collar bolts. "You don't gotta like it," he says, close enough that only Ransford can hear. "But you gotta go down." Ransford meets his eyes through the open face ring. "If there was a man in there," Lavoie cuts him off. "If there was a man in there, he came to Pearl to kill sailors in their bunks. That's what he came for." It's an answer, but it's not the kind that settles anything. The helmet seals. The world becomes hiss, glass, and darkness again. Ransford descends, guided by the line. The water feels colder now, not because the temperature changed, but because the meaning did. Every rung down is a rung deeper into the question. Did he just witness a self-destruct, or did he trigger a drowning? His boots touch bottom. The silt swirls. He follows the line toward the wreck. His lamp finds it. The midget sub sits more deeply in the mud than before. The hull angle looks subtly different, like it has settled as compartments filled. The seam where the bubbles vented is now quiet, but the water around it has a faint shimmer, oil or trapped air still leaking in tiny amounts. Ransford moves closer. His glove touches the hull again. No vibration now, no rhythmic tremor, just cold metal and the pressure of the harbor. He sweeps the lamp along the seam. The knife is still there, but not in the same position. It has shifted outward, like a lever that snapped loose. He follows the cord again. It lies slack now, drifting slightly with the current. Whatever tension existed is gone. That's when he notices a different detail. A small opening near the forward section, not a hatch, something like a scuttling valve or vent. It's ajar, just enough to be wrong. Ransford's breath catches, because this looks less like exploded and more like opened. "Topside," he says. No more vibration, no movement. Hulls settle deeper. There's an opening forward, like a valve or vent. It's not fully shut. Whitaker's voice comes back, controlled. "Can you close it?" Ransford stares at the opening. Closing it would be simple. Turn, push, force. But he can't stop thinking about what happens if there's pressure trapped inside. What happens if there's gas? What happens if there's a charge meant to detonate when tampered with? "I can try," he says carefully. "But if it's rigged..." Whitaker cuts in. "We need it intact, Bob. If there's documents, codes, gyros, anything, we need it intact." Intact. A single word that reveals the priority. Not bodies, not morality. Intelligence. Proof. An artifact to show the world we caught one. Ransford edges closer anyway, because he's Navy, because he's already down here, because there is no clean way out of this. He reaches toward the valve. His glove brushes the metal, and in that instant, a sound vibrates through the hull, faint, metallic, and unmistakably human. Tap. Tap, tap. Ransford freezes so hard the silt settles around his boots. His lamp beam holds steady on the valve. Tap. It's not random. Not the groan of settling steel. Not the current moving debris. It's a pattern. A knock. His throat tightens. "Topside," he whispers, voice suddenly raw. "I'm hearing tapping. From inside." On the comms, Whitaker's inhale is audible. Repeat. Tapping, Ransford says again, louder now, as if volume can make it less terrifying. Like someone signaling. The crew above erupts in overlapping voices. Ransford hears words break through. Impossible. No air. Booby. Jesus. Whitaker forces order. All stations shut up. Bob, do not open anything. Do you understand me? Do not open anything. Ransford's free hand curls into a fist. He wants to answer yes. He wants to obey. But his other hand is inches from the seam, and he's imagining a man inside in pitch darkness, lungs burning, fingernails scraping metal, making the only sound he can make to say, "I'm here." He leans closer, presses the side of his helmet against the hull like a doctor listening for a heartbeat. Tap, tap, tap. It's weaker now, slower, as if the person inside is losing strength. Ransford's voice shakes. "Sir, if there's someone alive, we can't just leave him." Whitaker's reply comes back like a door slamming. "That's an enemy combatant, and if it's a trap and you open it, you kill yourself and anyone near that lift line. You do not open it." Ransford closes his eyes for half a second. You can almost feel the claustrophobia of that moment, him trapped between orders and instinct, between hatred and basic human reflex. The tapping continues, then stops. Ransford waits, holding his breath. Nothing. Only the hiss of his own air feed and the distant rumble of harbor engines. He pulls back, lamp sweeping the hull again. He sees the knife, the slack cord, the half-open vent. And suddenly the story shifts in his mind. Maybe the knife wasn't a trigger. Maybe it was a tool, jammed into the seam by someone inside, trying to pry at a stuck fitting, trying to force a vent, trying to get air. Maybe the cord wasn't a booby trap at all. Maybe it was part of the net that caught them, something the sub snagged, something they tried to cut, something that finally tightened when Ransford moved. If that's true, then his heel didn't trigger an enemy suicide. It finished an accident. It sealed a fate that was hanging by a thread. "Topside," Ransford says, voice flat now. Tapping has stopped. Whitaker pauses, then speaks softly, as if softening the words changes their meaning. "Copy. Back away. We're proceeding with lift. Mark attachment points." Ransford obeys, because obedience is what keeps you alive in war. He clips a marker line onto the wreck, working by touch. He finds a sturdy point, threads the rope, tightens the knot with numb fingers. As he finishes, his lamp catches a detail he missed before. Painted characters on the hull, partially obscured by silt. Japanese markings. Identification. Proof. He reports it. The topside response is immediate. "Good. Good. Keep it intact." Ransford backs off, giving the wreck space for the lift lines. His helmet bumps against something floating, soft. He turns his lamp. A glove. Not his. Leather, small, and too clean to be debris from an American ship. It drifts near the sub like it belongs to it, as if the harbor is offering a final artifact. Ransford reaches out and catches it before it sinks again. Inside, the fingers are stiff. The cuff is torn. And tucked into the cuff, caught in the stitching, there's a scrap of paper, waterlogged but still held together. Ransford's breath stops. Paper doesn't belong down here unless someone brought it with purpose. He turns it in his glove, trying not to shred it. Ink marks, blurred but visible. He can't read them underwater, not like this, not with his lamp flickering and his hands shaking, but he knows what it might be. A map, a code, a last message, or a confession. He brings it close to the helmet glass, trying to make out the strokes, and as he does, something bumps the hull from the inside. One last dull thud, like a body shifting as the wreck settles deeper into the mud. Ransford jerks back instinctively, heart slamming, then silence again. He looks at the paper in his hand. If he takes this up, it becomes evidence, intelligence, something the Navy can use. If he leaves it, it stays with the dead. He clips the glove carefully to his gear and begins his ascent, lines sliding through his hands. Above, the surface light grows brighter, and with it the certainty that whatever truth is inside that glove, the Navy will decide how the world hears it. Because by morning, they won't just be lifting a submarine. They'll be lifting a story. And someone will make sure it ends the way they need it to. The deckhands haul Ransford in with the careful speed you use around something fragile and dangerous. The moment his boots hit wood, the harbor feels almost unreal. Too open, too bright, too full of voices. "Helmet off," Lavoy orders, already turning bolts. When the brass lifts away, cold air hits Ransford's face like a slap. He gulps it, then reaches for the glove clipped to his harness as if it might vanish. Whitaker's eyes lock on it immediately. "What's that?" Ransford hesitates a fraction. "Found it near the hull. Looked Japanese." Whitaker takes it without asking, fingers gentler than you'd expect from a tired officer. He turns it over, finds the scrap of paper lodged in the cuff. He doesn't try to unfold it fully, not yet. He just checks that it exists. Then he looks at Ransford, and something passes between them that feels like an order without words. "This is bigger than you now." "Bag it," Whitaker says to the petty officer. "Chain of custody, right now." The petty officer produces a waxed evidence pouch, waterproof, official, clean in a world of grime. The glove disappears inside, the paper with it. A little piece of the underwater truth, sealed into Navy procedure. Ransford wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. "Sir, there was tapping. It stopped." Whitaker nods once, curt. "I heard you." "That opening forward, if it was a vent, someone might have been trying to—" Whitaker cuts him off with a glance sharp enough to end the sentence. "Diver, you did your job. Now we finish this." A tugboat approaches, its engine thudding like a heartbeat. Alongside it, a salvage barge creeps into position with cranes and cables. Men on both vessels work in near silence, their faces lit by lamps and cigarette tips. No one talks about yesterday. No one says the word surrender. They talk in weights, angles, tensions. A line drops into the water with a splash. Another. The lift slings follow, heavy as anchor chain. The plan is simple. Wrap, secure, raise. The execution is anything but. Any sudden shift and the wreck could roll, snap cables, drag men overboard, or bring up a surprise, like a charge still armed, or a torpedo still live. Ransford watches from the deck, helmet off, hair plastered down. His job now is to point, to confirm attachment points, to be the man who already saw it in the dark. Whitaker stands beside him, staring at the water as if he can see through it. "We lift slow," he tells the salvage crew chief. "I want that hull intact." "Aye," the chief replies, "if it wants to come." That line lands wrong. If it wants to come. As if the sub has a vote. The winches engage. Cables tighten, singing faintly under strain. The harbor surface trembles with concentric rings. Then, slowly, the water begins to bulge. A shape rises. At first, it's just a darker patch under the surface. Then, the curve of steel breaks through, slick and black, shedding oil like sweat. Mud slides off in sheets. The midget sub emerges like an animal hauled from a trap, too small to be terrifying, too purposeful to be harmless. "Jesus," someone whispers. The hull clears the water another foot. A gust of harbor air hits it, carrying a smell that makes men turn their heads. Not fuel, not oil. Something older, stale, human. Ransford's stomach tightens. You can almost feel how the smell rewires the moment. Because now this isn't an abstract enemy craft. It's a cramped metal tube that held breathing men. The crane creaks as the sub rises higher. Water pours from seams and fittings. Then the forward section tilts slightly, and a new stream gushes out, dark, thick, tinged with something that isn't mud. The deck crew goes quiet. Whitaker's voice stays clinical. "Easy. Keep it steady." The sub swings over the barge, dripping steadily. It lowers onto wooden blocks with a dull, heavy contact. The hull shudders once and settles. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then a faint metallic click comes from inside. So small, half the men don't hear it. But Ransford does. He stiffens. "Did you?" he begins. Whitaker raises a hand, silencing him without looking. A Navy EOD man, explosive ordnance disposal, wasn't yet the formalized force it would become, but the Navy already had men trained to deal with things that went wrong. Steps forward cautiously. He crouches near the bow, eyeing fittings, seams, anything that looks like a charge housing. "You said there was a cord," he murmurs. Ransford nods. "Ran along the hull. Went slack after the flooding." The ordnance man's fingers hover, never touching. And a knife. Wedged into the seam. The man exhales through his nose. Could be a scuttle attempt. Could be a trigger. Could be desperation. Desperation. That word rings truer than suicide. Whitaker gestures toward the hatch. We open it controlled. Slow. If there's gas, we vent. If there's a charge, we find it. "Sir," the ordnance man says, "if they scuttled, they may have set demolition to destroy documents." Whitaker's eyes flicker. That's why we're here. Two sailors bring tools. Wrenches, pry bars, a hand pump. The hatch bolts are small but stubborn, corroded by salt and coated in silt. The first wrench turn squeals. Men flinch, as if expecting the sub to answer back. "Hold," Whitaker orders. He looks at the ordnance man. "Any indication?" "None yet." Whitaker nods. "Proceed." The bolts come free one by one. Each removed bolt feels like a step towards something no one wants to see, but everyone needs to confirm. Finally, the last bolt loosens. A sailor wedges a pry bar under the hatch rim. Ransford feels his own breathing speed up. The tapping he heard underwater returns in his head like a phantom sound, as if the metal remembers it. The pry bar flexes. The hatch shifts a fraction. A hiss escapes, stale air exhaling after being trapped too long. It doesn't smell like an engine room. It smells like a basement sealed for days, like sweat gone cold, like fear. The hatch lifts, and the first thing the men see isn't a body. It's blood, dried and smeared along the inner rim, like someone tried to claw the hatch open from inside. A handprint, partial, fingers dragged. The sailors freeze. The ordnance man leans closer, eyes narrowing. No detonation, no blast marks. This isn't a self-destruct. Whitaker's jaw tightens. "Open it." The hatch comes up fully, and light pours into the cramped interior. For a second, the space looks empty because the human mind refuses to categorize what it's seeing. Then it resolves. 2 Japanese sailors are inside, wedged in the narrow compartment like men packed into a coffin. Their uniforms are soaked and stiff. Their skin is gray-blue in the harsh light. One slumps forward against the controls. The other lies twisted near the hatch. The second man's right hand is near his waist. A small knife, short-bladed, practical, rests beside him. Not plunged into his chest, not ritual, not dramatic. A tool dropped at the end of effort. Ransford's throat tightens so hard it hurts. Whitaker stares without blinking. Identify insignia. A sailor leans in, careful not to disturb anything. Imperial Japanese Navy, sir. Looks like petty officer and possibly an ensign? The ordnance man points to a fitting near the forward bulkhead. That's your scuttle valve. It's open. Ransford feels cold spread through him. So the vent he saw wasn't ajar by accident. It was opened, deliberately. But then, why the tapping? Why the handprint? Why the knife in the seam? Whitaker's voice is flat. So they scuttled. The ordnance man shakes his head slightly. They tried, but look. He angles his flashlight toward the seam. A thin, bright line of scraped steel runs where the knife must have been wedged. The marks are fresh, aggressive. They were trying to force it, the ordnance man says. Maybe the valve stuck, maybe the hatch stuck, maybe the net jammed them. They tried to pry something. Then water came. Whitaker's gaze flicks toward Ransford, sharp with implication. Ransford feels the deck tilt under his feet. Sir, when my heel caught that cord, the knife shifted. That's when the air vented. Whitaker holds his stare for a long beat. Meaning? Ransford swallows. Meaning, they might have been trying to get air. And when the knife moved, whatever it was holding, something opened. Or tore. Or failed. The ordnance man's expression tightens. If that knife was wedged as a stop, and it got pulled free, it could have let the valve swing wider, or let the seam gap, or snapped a fitting. Whitaker's mouth becomes a line. This is the moment his earlier wording, enemy suicide, enemy action, meets the physical evidence. The handprint, the scuttle valve, the tool marks. A sailor behind them mutters, So the diver drowned him? Lavoie's head snaps around. Shut your mouth. But the sentence is already out. It hangs in the night air, heavy as the smell from the hatch. Whitaker turns slowly. No one says that again. The sailor pales. Aye, sir. Whitaker steps closer to the open hatch, peering in like he can read the truth off the dead. His voice drops, not for the crew, but for himself. They came here to kill Americans. Ransford answers before he can stop himself. Maybe, but right then, they were men in a box. Whitaker's eyes flash. And you were a U.S. Navy diver in a harbor still burning. The words sting because they're true. This isn't a courtroom. It's a base that was attacked yesterday morning. It's a chain of command that cannot afford moral hesitation in front of exhausted sailors. Still, the handprint won't leave Ransford's mind. The dragging fingers, the desperate smear. Whitaker turns to the petty officer. Photograph everything. Then we remove bodies and secure any equipment, compass, gyro, charts, anything with markings. The petty officer nods and signals to a photographer. Navy still camera, flash unit, careful angles. The first flash pops, harsh and white, lighting the dead men like they're on a stage. Ransford looks away. A sailor reaches in with gloved hands, searching carefully along the compartments. He pulls out a small metal case, then another. He sets them on the deck like sacred objects. Whitaker's posture changes subtly. This is what he wanted. Open them, he orders. The sailor hesitates. Sir, if there's... Open them carefully. The first case clicks open. Inside are wet papers, folded tight, ink blurred but visible in places. The second case holds a small notebook bound in oilcloth. Ransford's pulse quickens. The scrap of paper in the glove, Whitaker's evidence bag, suddenly feels like part of a larger set. Whitaker takes the oilcloth notebook with both hands, as if it might disintegrate. He looks at the cover, then at the first page, eyes scanning Japanese characters he can't read. Get an interpreter, he snaps. Naval intelligence, now. A runner moves. As the crew works, the ordnance man points again to the scuttle valve. Sir, this looks like it was forced. The tool marks are... Whitaker cuts him off. We'll write it up. The ordnance man's eyes harden. Write it up how? Whitaker's tone doesn't change. As enemy scuttling. As suicide, if that's what they need it to be. Ransford hears it, and the anger rises hot in his chest. Sir, there was tapping. Whitaker turns, and for the first time, his control slips just enough to show fatigue. Diver, you heard tapping in a harbor full of wrecks, in water full of metal, in a day full of ghosts. You don't know what you heard. Ransford starts to argue, but Lavoie grips his arm, hard. A warning. Not because Lavoie agrees with Whitaker, but because the chain of command is a steel wall, and Ransford is flesh. Whitaker lowers his voice again, almost reasonable. Even if there was a man alive for a minute, we were not going to open a trapped enemy boat underwater. That would have killed you. It would have killed my crew. And then what? We lose more Americans the day after Pearl because we felt sorry? Ransford can't answer that cleanly. There is no clean answer. The photographer snaps again. Another flash. Another frozen moment of bodies and steel and blood. Then, from the far end of the barge, a shout. Sir, over here! A sailor stands by the stern. He's holding something long and cylindrical, part of the sub's equipment. He turns it so the light catches it. A torpedo coupling. Then another man lifts a casing. It's small but unmistakable. Explosives, the sailor says. Charges, still here. Whitaker strides over. The ordnance man follows fast, suddenly all business. He examines the casing, fingers hovering. Could still be live, he warns. Whitaker looks back at the open hatch, at the documents, at the bodies. The pieces now form a more dangerous picture. This wasn't just a trapped boat. It was a weapon platform that may have failed in the net and then tried to die without giving up its secrets. And if there's live explosives still on board, then the knife and cord moment becomes even more terrifying. One wrong movement down there could have turned Ransford into vapor. Whitaker turns to the crew. Clear non-essential personnel. Now. Men step back, suddenly remembering fear again. Ransford stands at the edge of the barge, staring at the sub. He imagines the last minutes inside. Air going sour, hands working a stuck valve, someone wedging a knife, someone tapping because they heard noise outside, boots in silt, metal scraping net cable. Then the cord tightens, the knife shifts, the sea comes in, and above, the Navy decides what to call it. Whitaker's voice cuts through the night. Ransford! Ransford looks up. Whitaker holds the oilcloth notebook, dripping onto the deck. Naval Intelligence wants a statement from you, a formal one. Exact sequence, exact wording. Ransford's mouth goes dry. Yes, sir. Whitaker steps closer, lowering his voice so only Ransford can hear. Choose your words carefully. You understand? Ransford holds Whitaker's gaze. He does understand. Because this isn't just about what happened underwater. It's about what the Navy is willing to admit happened on the surface. And as the tugboat engines thud and the salvage lights glare down on the dead Japanese sailors, Ransford realizes the most dangerous thing in Pearl Harbor right now isn't the explosives on the barge. It's the story they're about to write. Type Continue to generate the next section. They sit Ransford in a makeshift office on Ford Island, one of those spaces that used to be ordinary, where men once argued about leave schedules and supply shortages. Now it smells like wet wool, cigarettes, and panic. A single desk lamp throws hard light onto blank forms that want neat answers. Ransford's hair is still damp. His hands won't stop moving, fingers rubbing thumb pads raw, as if he can erase the feel of that cord tightening under his heel. Across the desk, a young intelligence officer clears his throat. Ensign Thomas H. Sweeney, Naval Intelligence Liaison. Clean uniform, clean hands, eyes that keep flicking down to the paper as if the page itself is safer than the diver in front of him. At Sweeney's side sits a civilian in wire-rimmed glasses. Older, face pinched from lack of sleep. Translator, Japanese linguist. Nobody introduces him properly. Names are luxuries tonight. Standing behind them, occupying the room like a shadow with rank, is Lieutenant J.G. Whittaker. Sweeney clicks a pen. State your name, rate, and assignment. Diver First Class Robert Ransford, Ransford says. U.S. Navy, Pearl Harbor Salvage. Sweeney nods and writes. Time you entered the water? Ransford hesitates. Time. He's not sure anymore. The night blurred into a single long breath. Whittaker supplies it smoothly. Approximately 0217. Logged in. Sweeney writes that down too, grateful to have certainties handed to him. Describe contact with the enemy craft, Sweeney says. Ransford inhales slowly. I found a small Japanese submarine caught in harbor defense netting. Hull was partially buried. I approached to assess condition and possible hazards. And then? Sweeney prompts. Ransford looks at the blank line waiting to be filled. The truth is messy. The truth contains a heel snagging a cord, and a knife shifting, and bubbles boiling upward like a last exhale. The truth also contains tapping. He chooses his words the way Whittaker told him to, carefully. I observed a line along the hull, Ransford says, possibly connected to the harbor net, possibly rigged. I attempted to withdraw, and my boot caught the line. The line tightened. Immediately after, I observed a release of air from a seam. The craft appeared to begin flooding. Sweeney scribbles. Release of air. Flooding. The translator shifts slightly in his chair, as if he feels something coming. Sweeney looks up. Any indication this was caused by an explosive? No, sir, Ransford answers. No blast, no flash, just a sudden venting. Whittaker's voice cuts in from behind, calm as steel. Enemy scuttling is consistent with this. Ransford's jaw tightens, but he doesn't contradict it. Not yet. Sweeney nods quickly, relieved again. Enemy scuttling, understood. Ransford's eyes flick to Whittaker. That's the phrase. That's the tidy version. Sweeney continues. You reported a knife. Ransford's mouth goes dry. Yes, sir. A knife appeared to be wedged in the seam near where the air released. Define appeared, Sweeney says, eager, pen hovering. Ransford realizes Sweeney wants him to declare intent on behalf of dead men. He wants, they did it on purpose. I saw it positioned like a tool, Ransford says. I can't say why. Whittaker shifts a fraction, the smallest warning. Sweeney writes anyway. Knife used as tool. Possible mechanism. He flips a page. You reported tapping from inside. Whitaker's presence sharpens. The room gets smaller. Ransford feels his pulse in his teeth. This is the moment where his story can become human. Or become useful. "Yes, sir," Ransford says, voice steady. "I heard rhythmic tapping after the flooding began. Then it stopped." Sweeney's pen pauses mid-stroke. "Rhythmic." Ransford nods. "Like signaling." Whitaker speaks before Sweeney can build it into something. Diver was operating in low visibility among wreckage. Metallic sounds were common. Ransford turns his head slightly, just enough to show he heard the correction. "It didn't sound common, sir." Whitaker meets his eyes. "You're tired, Diver. You've been in the water. You've been under stress. Make sure your statement reflects what you can confirm." Sweeney looks between them, uncomfortable. "So, we can note possible tapping." Whitaker's tone stays polite. "We can note it as unconfirmed noise consistent with wreckage movement." Ransford feels heat rise in his chest. "Sir, it wasn't wreckage. It was—" Whitaker cuts him off sharply, not loud, but final. "Diver, answer the question asked." A long second passes. Ransford exhales. "I heard tapping," he repeats. "I cannot confirm the source." Sweeney scribbles fast, grateful to escape conflict. "Noted." The translator finally speaks, voice quiet. "The papers recovered from the case. They include a handwritten note." Whitaker's head turns immediately. "Read it." The translator hesitates, then opens a damp page carefully, as if it might fall apart. His Japanese is precise, professional. When he switches to English, his voice loses a little confidence, because translation is never clean, and this is the worst kind of text to translate. "It is not a map," he says. "It's personal." Sweeney leans forward. "What does it say?" The translator swallows. "It identifies the commanding officer, Ensign Kazuo Sakamaki." Ransford freezes. A name makes the dead suddenly real. Not the Japanese. Not enemy. A man with a family name, written in ink. Whitaker's eyes narrow. He knows the strategic value. A named attacker. Proof the United States can put in a communique. The translator continues. "It speaks of honor, of completing the mission, of not returning alive." Sweeney's face brightens with grim satisfaction. "Suicide doctrine." Ransford's stomach turns. Whitaker's voice is low. "Read the exact phrasing." The translator looks down again, then up. "It says, approximately, we do not expect to survive. If captured, we will bring shame." Whitaker nods once, as if this settles it. Then they scuttled. Ransford hears the trap closing. A note about not returning alive becomes, in the Navy's hands, proof of suicide in the moment. A cultural concept becomes a mechanical explanation. But the handprint on the hatch rim wasn't a philosophy. It was a body fighting for air. Ransford's voice comes out rough. That note could have been written before they ever entered the harbor. Sweeney looks startled. "But—" Whitaker's gaze pins Ransford. "Diver, that's enough." Ransford clenches his jaw. He sees it now. This is not an investigation. It's a construction. A narrative built to be strong enough to carry public weight. Outside, a runner appears in the doorway. "Lieutenant Whitaker, sir. Admiral Staff wants the report at first light." Whitaker nods. "He'll have it." Sweeney shuffles pages, then clears his throat again. "One more item. The manner of death." Ransford looks at him. "What?" Sweeney taps the paper with the pen, suddenly apologetic. "How we characterize it. For the record, drowning due to scuttling or drowning due to sabotage. Whitaker responded immediately. Enemy scuttling. Sweeney writes it down. Ransford's hands go still. He can almost feel the moment his own agency slips away. The story is leaving his mouth and becoming theirs. Sweeney slides the paper across. Sign here, please. Ransford stares at the line, the ink waiting. He imagines signing means he agrees. He imagines refusing means court-martial, or at least the end of his career. He imagines his name attached forever to whatever phrasing they choose. Whitaker's shadow falls across the desk. Ransford. It's not a threat in volume. It's a threat in certainty. Ransford picks up the pen. His hand shakes, then steadies. He signs. The ink dries fast under the lamp. The paper becomes official truth. Sweeney gathers the pages as if they're fragile relics, then stands. Thank you, Diver. You did your duty. Ransford doesn't respond. The translator carefully closes the oilcloth notebook, eyes distant. He looks like a man who understands that words can kill twice, once in the moment and again in the retelling. Whitaker remains after the others leave. The door shuts. The room feels suddenly quieter, smaller, more private. Whitaker studies Ransford for a long beat. Then he speaks, voice lower than before. Do you think you killed them? Ransford's throat tightens. I don't know, sir. Whitaker nods, almost imperceptibly. That's the only honest answer. Ransford looks up, surprised. Whitaker continues, controlled but not cruel. The day after Pearl, the Navy needs certainty. The public needs it. The sailors who watched friends burn need it. We cannot put out a report that says, maybe. Ransford's voice breaks. But maybe it is what it is. Whitaker's eyes hardened again. Then you keep maybe in your head, Diver. Not on paper. Whitaker turns to leave, then pauses at the door. One more thing. That glove you found? It's paper. Intelligence thinks it's part of the same note. They'll keep it. Ransford's pulse spikes. Sir, can I? Whitaker cuts him off. No. That stays with intelligence. The door opens. Whitaker steps out. Then he adds, without turning around, Get some sleep. You're back in the water tomorrow. The door closes. Ransford sits alone under the desk lamp, staring at the empty line where his statement used to be. Outside, Ford Island hums with engines and hurried footsteps. The salvage barge lights still glare on the harbor, still illuminating the small, captured submarine like a trophy. And somewhere in an office he will never enter, men are already drafting a communique that will travel across the Pacific and back across the American mainland. A Japanese submarine entered Pearl Harbor. Its crew chose death over capture. The Navy thwarted them. Clean, sharp, useful. Ransford closes his eyes and hears the tapping again, faint but rhythmic, as if it's coming from inside the walls. Tap, tap, tap. He opens his eyes, because the worst part is this. If the Navy calls it suicide, then no one has to ask the question Ransford can't stop asking. What if one man in that tiny hull didn't want to die yet? And if that's true, what else has the harbor swallowed that the paperwork will never admit? A knock comes at the door, hard, urgent. Ransford looks up. A voice from the hallway. Diver Ransford, you need to come, now. Something's wrong with the sub. Ransford's chair scrapes back so fast it nearly tips. He's through the door before the runner finishes breathing. Outside, the night air hits him with brine and diesel. Floodlights still rake the harbor like search beams hunting a ghost that's already gone. Men move in quick clusters, faces tense, voices low. "What's wrong?" Ransford demands. The runner, a sailor with oil smudged across his cheek, points toward the salvage barge. "The hatch, sir. Someone thinks it shifted, like it settled open more." Ransford's stomach drops. Because metal can settle, rigging can relax. But the way the sailor said it, "someone thinks," carries the one thing every crewman fears. A thing that looked dead and then didn't. They jog down the pier. The boards vibrate faintly under the thud of tug engines. Ahead, the barge squats under harsh lights. The midget sub sits on blocks like a captured animal, its black hull gleaming wetly. A crowd has formed at a safe distance. Whitaker is there already, along with the ordnance man and two sailors holding flashlights like weapons. Whitaker spots Ransford. "You heard?" Ransford nods, breath coming fast. "The hatch?" The ordnance man answers, not Whitaker. "No explosion, no smoke, but the hatch position isn't what it was." Ransford moves closer, then stops where the ordnance man's outstretched arm tells him to stop. "You don't go near it," the ordnance man warns. "Not until I say." Whitaker's eyes stay on the sub. "We've got live charges on board. We've got documents recovered. And we've got a craft that may have been rigged to destroy itself once it's moved." Ransford stares at the hatch rim. In the glare of light, the dried blood looks black. The handprint is still there, smeared like a final signature. Then he sees what everyone is reacting to. The hatch lid is not lying flat. It's cocked, just slightly, as if a wedge has shifted beneath it. A sailor whispers, "It wasn't like that." The ordnance man crouches carefully and angles his flashlight into the narrow gap. "Gas buildup?" someone asks. "Could be," he says. "Could be pressure trapped. Could be buoyancy changes inside. Could be a fitting venting." Ransford hears the list, but his mind is elsewhere. The tapping, the seam twitching, the last dull thud inside the hull as he lifted the glove. He steps closer again, and Whitaker snaps, "Hold!" Ransford stops. Whitaker's jaw clenches. "You're not a bomb man." Ransford's voice comes out tight. "Sir, if there's a chance..." "A chance of what?" Whitaker cuts in. "A third man?" Ransford hesitates. The manifest doesn't exist in his head. Only the fear does. Midget subs like these typically carry two. That's what the manuals say. That's what the Navy believes. 2 seats, 2 bodies. But war has a way of making manuals feel like fairy tales. "I don't know," Ransford says. "But the tapping," Whitaker interrupts, sharper now. "You testified you couldn't confirm the source." Ransford flinches. He hears the paper sliding across the desk again, the ink drying, the Navy's version of reality becoming a weapon. The ordnance man shifts his light. The beam catches something inside the gap, something pale. He freezes. "Back," he says quietly. Men step away as if the air itself might ignite. "What is it?" Whitaker asks. The ordnance man doesn't answer immediately. He adjusts position, not touching, only looking, then swallows. "It's cloth, like a sleeve, jammed near the hatch." A sleeve. Not a valve, not a cable, not a piece of equipment. A sleeve implies a body. Ransford's skin prickles. You can almost feel the moment the entire barge crew's thinking changes, because now enemy craft becomes possible survivor, and that word has a magnetic pull even when everyone hates it. Whitaker's voice lowers. "Could be one of the bodies shifted." "Maybe," the ordnance man says. "Or maybe there's more in there than we saw." Whitaker looks toward the intelligence petty officer standing near the document cases. Get everyone back. Clear the deck. The petty officer hesitates. Sir, the Admiral's report, Whitaker's stare is lethal. Clear the deck. Men move fast, eager to obey an order that also gets them farther from a possible blast. Ransford remains where he is, chest tight, eyes locked on the hatch. In the back of his mind, he counts what he knows. 2 bodies seen. 1 knife inside. Documents recovered. Live charges found. A hatch now slightly more open. And a sleeve. Whitaker turns to the ordnance man. Options. The ordnance man's voice is methodical. We can vent the interior and resecure the hatch without opening further, or we can open fully and inspect, but that increases risk of triggering a device or shifting charges. Whitaker nods once. Vent first. The ordnance man signals for a long-handled tool, something that keeps hands away. He positions it near a fitting, not the hatch itself. Sweat beads on his brow, despite the cool air. Ransford watches, barely breathing. The tool touches metal, very gently. It turns. A hiss escapes, thin, sustained, like a tire losing air. The smell that follows makes men step back again. Not just stale air now, something sour, almost sweet. The hiss continues for several seconds, then fades. The ordnance man waits, counts under his breath, then leans in again with the flashlight, his shoulders tense. "What?" Whitaker demands. The ordnance man straightens slowly. The sleeve moved. Ransford's heart slams. Moved how? Not settling, the ordnance man says, voice low. Like it slid outward. Whitaker's face goes tight with anger, fear, and calculation all at once. That's impossible. Ransford hears his own voice, and it surprises him with how calm it is. It's not impossible, if someone's alive. A long silence follows. You can almost feel everyone listening for sound from the hull, as if the metal might speak. Then, faintly, there it is. A scrape. Not loud, not dramatic. A slow, dragging sound that could be cloth against steel. Ransford's mouth goes dry. Did you hear that? The ordnance man nods once without looking at him. I heard it. Whitaker doesn't speak. His eyes stay on the hatch, and for the first time since the attack, the lieutenant looks like a man who has run out of options that fit neatly on paper. The runner who fetched Ransford whispers, "Sir, what do we do?" Whitaker's voice comes out controlled, but you can hear the strain. We don't rush. Ransford steps forward again, not obeying the invisible boundary this time. Whitaker's hand shoots out to stop him, but Ransford is already speaking. Sir, if there's a man in there, he's dying, every minute. Whitaker grips his sleeve hard. And if it's a trap, every minute we get closer, we die too. Ransford pulls his arm free. Then let me go. I'm the diver. I'm the one who... He stops, because the sentence wants to turn into confession. I'm the one who might have caused this. Whitaker stares at him. You want to open that hatch? Ransford doesn't answer immediately. He looks at the gap, at the blood, at the sleeve. He thinks of the note about shame. He thinks of the tapping that stopped. He thinks of a handprint that wasn't a philosophical statement, but a fight. Yes, he says. Whitaker's jaw flexes. If you open it and it detonates, you'll take half my crew. Then clear them back, Ransford says. Put me on the far side. Give me the longest tool you've got. Let me do it with distance. The ordnance man watches them, expression unreadable, then says, He's right about one thing. If someone's alive, they won't be for long. Whitaker's eyes flick to the intelligence petty officer, then to the document cases, then back to Ransford. This isn't just a rescue decision. It's a story decision. Because if there's a living Japanese sailor pulled from that hull, the communique collapses. The neat narrative of suicide over capture becomes complicated. It becomes a prisoner, an interrogation, a human face that might look into a camera lens. And the Navy is not ready for complicated. Not tonight. Whitaker speaks softly, as if saying it softly makes it less brutal. If there's a survivor, we take him alive. Ransford nods immediately. Yes, sir. Whitaker's voice hardens. And we keep this quiet until the Admiral decides what to release. Ransford doesn't like it, but he understands. War is not just bullets. It's information. Whitaker motions to the ordnance man. Give him what he needs. The ordnance man hands Ransford a long-handled pry tool, wooden shaft, metal hook, crude but effective. If you feel resistance, he warns, you stop. You do not force. You do not become part of the mechanism. Ransford takes it. The handle is rough in his palm. Two sailors reposition lights to minimize glare. Men retreat to the edge of the barge, some stepping off entirely. The deck suddenly feels too open, too exposed, like a stage where one wrong move ends in fire. Ransford approaches the hatch with measured steps. He kneels, keeping his body to the side, not over the opening. He slides the tool into the gap carefully. The sleeve is there, pale fabric pressed against metal, as if the person inside is right up against the opening. Ransford speaks without thinking, voice low, almost instinctive. Hey, if you're in there, don't move. No reply, of course. Only that faint dragging sound again, slow, weak. Ransford sets his jaw. He leverages the tool a fraction. The hatch shifts. A thin stream of water dribbles out from inside, then stops. The air that escapes is warmer than the night air, and it smells worse. Concentrated human breath, trapped too long. Ransford levers again, gently. The hatch lifts another inch. And now, in that narrow crack, light falls across something inside that makes his blood run cold. An eye. Just for a second, glossy, bloodshot, wide with fear, looking up at the light like it's the first sunrise after a lifetime underground. The eye blinks once, slowly. Alive. Ransford's voice comes out hoarse. Sir, we've got one. Whitaker steps forward despite himself, then stops short as if remembering explosives. Confirmed? Ransford doesn't look away from the crack. Confirmed. Inside the hull, the eye shifts. A faint, rasping sound escapes. Barely a voice, more like air trying to become words. Ransford leans closer, careful. Can you understand me? He asks, even though he knows it's useless. The eye flutters again. The sleeve trembles. A hand, skeletal, shaking, pushes weakly toward the gap. Ransford's grip tightens on the tool. He feels every instinct screaming to open it fast. But he can't. Not with live charges on board, not with a possible trigger. Not with Whitaker's crew watching from a distance, waiting to see whether the diver's decision becomes their death. Ransford looks over his shoulder at Whitaker. Sir, I need permission to open fully. Whitaker's face is a mask, rank fighting with reality. Then he nods once. Do it, he says. Slow. Ransford turns back to the hatch. He slides the tool deeper, and somewhere inside, the survivor makes a sound that is unmistakably human. Pain, relief, terror, all braided together. Ransford begins to lift. And the midget sub, this trophy, this suicide, answers with a faint metallic click from deep within its hull, like a mechanism waking up. The click comes again, deeper this time, not from the hatch rim, but from somewhere down in the cramped belly of the craft. It's the sound of metal meeting metal under tension. A latch, a spring, a mechanism that was never meant to be heard on a calm night in Pearl Harbor. The ordnance man stiffens. "Stop!" Ransford freezes with the pry tool still wedged in the gap. The eye inside is still there, blinking slowly, trapped in a narrow slit of light like an animal peering through a crate. Whitaker doesn't move closer, but his voice cuts through the hush. "What was that?" The ordnance man raises a hand, palm outward, a universal signal. Don't add motion to this. He lowers his flashlight toward the open hatch and sweeps the beam along the interior walls without leaning in too far. "Could be a pressure latch releasing as we open," he says, not confident. "Could be a charge arming. Could be nothing." Ransford's arms tremble. The survivor's sleeve trembles too, a weak flutter in the crack. A rasping sound escapes again, air trying to become speech, lungs too dry, throat too swollen. Ransford swallows. He's dying. Whitaker holds his gaze for a fraction, just long enough for Ransford to see the war inside the lieutenant's face. Risk versus duty. Intelligence versus humanity. Narrative versus truth. Then Whitaker gives the order he can live with, at least tonight. Vent it again, then open. Controlled. The ordnance man nods, motions to a sailor. A second venting tool comes forward, long-handled, cautious. The fitting turns by millimeters. A hiss. Not the thin hiss from before. This one is fuller, almost a sigh, like the submarine is exhaling a lungful of stale air it's held too long. The smell blooms, sour breath, engine oil, sweat, and something unmistakably biological that makes men at the edge of the deck shift their weight, trying not to imagine what it means. Ransford doesn't move. He holds the hatch where it is, keeping the crack steady for the man inside to breathe. The eye blinks again, faster now. Not panic. Relief. Whitaker's voice drops. Open. Ransford levers the hatch another inch, then another. The hinges complain. The lid lifts, heavy and reluctant, as if the craft itself resists being exposed. When the opening is wide enough, Ransford sets the tool aside and reaches in with both hands, careful, slow, avoiding anything that could snag a wire or bump a charge. He finds fabric, uniform cloth, soaked and stiff. He finds a shoulder, and then he feels the man's bones through the wet cloth. So light. Too light. "Easy," Ransford murmurs, not sure who he's speaking to, himself, the survivor, the dead men still inside. The survivor's head rises into the light. He's young. Younger than most of the American sailors Ransford pulled from burning compartments yesterday. His hair is plastered to his forehead. His lips are cracked. His eyes are wide, but there's no fight in them now, only the raw animal instinct to get air. He tries to sit up, fails, and slumps forward. Ransford catches him. A sailor at the edge of the barge whispers, almost angry, "He's alive." Whitaker snaps, "Medical, now!" Two corpsmen hurry forward with a stretcher, but they stop short until the ordnance man nods that the movement is acceptable. The survivor coughs, weak, wet. Water dribbles from his mouth. He makes a sound that might be a word, but it collapses into a wheeze. Ransford shifts him upward, inch by inch, drawing him out of the hatch like pulling someone from a collapsed tunnel. The man's hands claw reflexively at air, then at Ransford's sleeve, not grasping to fight, grasping to anchor himself to the world above water. When his torso clears the rim, the corpsmen move in. They lay him on the stretcher with controlled speed, checking breathing, pulse, pupils. One corpsman glances up at Whitaker, face pale. "He's hypoxic, sir. Near dead." Whitaker's voice is tight, but alive. The survivor's eyes roll toward the floodlights. He squints like the light hurts. He tries to speak again. A single syllable escapes. Japanese. Soft. Trembling. The translator isn't here. No one understands. But the sound is unmistakably not defiance. It's pleading. Ransford stands over him, chest heaving. For a moment, he forgets rank, forgets flags. He just sees a man who was trapped, who tapped, who didn't want to become part of a story. Whitaker looks down at the stretcher and makes the next decision fast, decisive, the kind the Navy rewards. "You," he points at the runner. "Get intelligence here, now. No radios outside this perimeter. No photos." The photographer, still hovering nearby, hesitates with his camera. Whitaker's glare stops him cold. "No photos," Whitaker repeats, harder. "Not a damn one." Because a living Japanese sailor on an American stretcher is not what the public has been primed to believe. Not the day after Pearl. Not when everyone wants the enemy painted as faceless, fanatical, neatly dead. The corpsmen move the stretcher toward a waiting boat. The survivor's head lolls, eyes half open. As they pass Ransford, the man's fingers twitch and catch the edge of Ransford's wet sleeve again. Ransford leans down, close enough to be heard over the engines. "You're out," he says quietly. "You're out." The survivor's lips move. A whisper comes out, barely more than breath. "Sumimasen." Ransford doesn't understand the word in that moment, not properly. He only understands the tone. Apology. Defeat. A human voice that doesn't fit the Navy's paperwork. Whitaker watches the stretcher leave. Then he turns back to the sub, still sitting on blocks, hatch open now like a wound. "Secure it," he orders. "Remove the charges. Preserve the documents. I want every marking recorded." The ordnance man nods, already gesturing his team in. Ransford doesn't move. His mind is stuck on the tapping, and on how close they came to letting it end in silence. Whitaker steps beside him, voice low enough that it's almost private again. "You see what happens now?" Ransford keeps staring at the black hull. "You mean the story?" Whitaker doesn't deny it. "The story is a weapon, diver. Same as a torpedo." Ransford turns his head slightly. "And what do we call this weapon?" Whitaker's eyes remain on the sub. "We call it what the Admiral needs." Ransford's jaw tightens. "But he didn't die." Whitaker's expression hardens in a way that's almost weary. "He will be a prisoner. He will talk. He will be used. Or he will disappear into paperwork. But he will not become a headline that complicates tomorrow." Ransford's voice drops. "You already wrote my statement." Whitaker finally looks at him. "I wrote a statement that keeps you alive and keeps the Navy from looking weak." Ransford laughs once, short, bitter, disbelieving. "Weak? We pulled him out of a coffin." Whitaker's answer is immediate. "And if the public sees an enemy sailor alive in our harbor the day after the attack, they won't see strength. They'll see failure. They'll ask why he lived when our men didn't." Ransford looks away. You can almost feel the cruel logic of it, the way grief becomes policy. On the barge, sailors begin to work the interior again, and this time, there's no confusion about tapping. There's only the hard reality of what the midget sub was meant to do and what it failed to do. A sailor leans over the hatch and calls out, "Sir, 2 bodies confirmed still inside." Whitaker nods. "Recover them, respectfully, then bag everything." Respectfully. The word sounds strange in this place, in this week, but it's there. Ransford watches as they move with care, not gentleness, but procedure. The bodies come out wrapped. Equipment is catalogued. The sub is no longer a mystery. It's inventory. Intelligence arrives at a run. Sweeney, the translator, and 2 men with locked cases. Their eyes go straight to Whitaker. "Where is he?" Sweeney demands. Whitaker jerks his chin toward the departing boat. "Medical. Alive." Sweeney's face flashes with something like triumph, then quickly masks it. The Admiral will be told," Whitaker says. "Not by radio, not by rumor, by a controlled report." The translator looks toward Ransford, recognition in his eyes. "The name," he says softly. "From the note. Ensign Kazuo Sakamaki. If this is him." Ransford's chest tightens again. A name spoken out loud changes everything. Whitaker's eyes narrow. "It is him?" The translator nods slowly. "Most likely. The note identifies the officer. The survivor is likely the officer." Whitaker's mouth becomes a line. "Then he's valuable." Ransford hears the word valuable and feels something inside him recoil. Alive isn't a miracle anymore. Alive is an asset. Sweeney opens a locked case, pulls out fresh forms, already preparing the next layer of official truth. Whitaker looks at Ransford one last time. "You will not discuss the survivor outside this deck. You will not contradict the communiqué. You will not mention tapping." Ransford's voice is flat. "Aye, sir." Whitaker pauses, then adds something almost human. "You did what you could." Ransford doesn't answer, because he still doesn't know if that's true. Hours later, as the harbor begins to pale with the first hint of morning, the work continues. The captured submarine sits under lights, its black hull drying, its secrets laid out on tarps, charts, instruments, charges, bloodstains. Proof for men who need proof. And somewhere in a guarded room, a Japanese sailor, Ensign Kazuo Sakamaki, breathes American air as a prisoner. The first of a kind most Americans never imagined they'd see. The Navy's communiqué will still say the crew chose death over capture. Most people will believe it. Ransford will not. Because he heard the tapping. He saw the handprint. He saw the eye in the crack. And he will carry a private truth that doesn't fit cleanly into victory or blame. Down there in Pearl Harbor's black water, one diver's step tightened a line, and a knife shifted, and a submarine became a coffin. But at the last possible moment, a man inside that coffin did the one thing that can't be filed away as doctrine. He reached toward the light.